one thing that we played, and I'm going to get everyone's opinion, and I'm going to start with you, Bob, was, Noodles on Overdrive was talking about how the Hart Trophy is Auston Matthews to lose. Try to say that when your last name ends with an S. But the reason why he also brought that up is he just talked about, the fact that Toronto news always seems to spread across the country. So he's always being talked about. You can't help but see him, hear about him, watch the games. It becomes an oversaturation, and as a result, he becomes in the forefront of your mind. And I mean, obviously, if he keeps the play up, why wouldn't you consider him a candidate? But what do you make of that assessment of why then that becomes his Hart Trophy to lose?
Well, I think it's a double-edged sword in that regard, and that there's probably an anti-Toronto sentiment as well, that there's a whole bunch of people outside of Toronto in other parts of the country and the rest of the National Hockey League who are like, this gets, maybe too much hype, and that, for as much talk as there's been about Auston Matthews, and rightfully so, there hasn't been nearly enough talk about Nathan McKinnon, who's creeping up on Auston Matthews in terms of the goals. And McKinnon was right there last year in the mix. And, in Taylor Hall, he hasn't played as many games and hasn't been as dominant, but he had a few points last night in a loss. And so all those guys, and again, let's make something perfectly clear here. If the Edmonton Oilers had made the playoffs last year, Connor McDavid was winning the Hart Trophy going away. That's the only reason he didn't win the Hart Trophy, because he got caught up in the vortex of the debate over most valuable to his team and whether or not you're a playoff team or not. So I would say that Auston Matthews is simply one of a lot of guys that are in the conversation for the Hart Trophy, and quote unquote being in Toronto, the center of the self-appointed center of the universe for hockey and media and all of that sort of thing could actually work against you at some point too, depending on there might be a bit of we're sick and tired of everybody in Toronto talking about Auston Matthews. Let's talk about Nathan McKinnon or Connor McDavid or Taylor Hall or whomever.
So Bob, just quickly, so it could serve as a tiebreaker against Matthews.
It could, I guess.
Yeah,
but,
I'm not.
It'll be. What? At the end of the day, you got to think that most of the voters are pretty credible people, and that the vast majority of them will do the right thing, and they wouldn't vote for Matthews because he's from Toronto, and they wouldn't vote against him from Toronto. They just look at his season, they'd look at everybody else's season, and decide. So I understand what Noodles is saying, but I would say that the Hart Trophy is as wide open as it possibly could be, and that it's a blank canvas. And even though we're 10 games in.